Okay, this is the inequalities review. The one thing I just want to say is you solve it exactly like an equation, other than you bring your symbol down. That's first. Second, make sure that when you go to graph, make sure that you, if it is simply greater than or less than, it is an open circle. Greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, it is a closed circle. So please be aware of that. That's first. Second, um, if you are multiplying or dividing by a negative number, such as here, that you do have to switch the symbol. So please make sure that you are aware of that and make sure that you do that. Okay, so this is our second inequality, and in this case we're dividing by a negative number, so the symbol is switched. Again, make sure that you stop this at any time to make sure that you copy down the proper steps. The next example, excuse me, is a word problem. Okay, make sure that you again follow this step by step to make sure that you write down the proper inequality here and then you solve it. And then the last thing, even though it doesn't show here, I do want to do one problem on here. The problem that I want to do, one that New York State would do to you, is one where the x is on the other side. So if, for example, I have a problem like this, 2x plus 4, and I solve it. So I subtract 4 from both sides. And then I divide both sides by 2, and I have x is less, or 7 is less than x. Before you graph it, because we are normally used to graphing whichever way the arrow points, remember, the only time you do that is when x is on the left-hand side. So you can do one of two things. You can rewrite this, and remember, when you write this, you have to make sure that that arrow is still pointing to the same thing when you rewrite this properly. So to rewrite this properly and write it with x on the left-hand side, I'm going to put the 7 on the other side. Now I've got to make sure that this arrow is still pointing to the 7. So in this case, I'm going to rewrite this, and now the arrow is still pointing to the 7. So now that my x is on the left-hand side, now I can graph it properly, okay? If you graph it this way, just make sure that you're shading the opposite way. So please make sure you're careful with that if you see that on the New York State exam. This ends the lesson.